Thank you for joining us for this session of the Trying Family web series. We will begin shortly as we allow for participants to make their way in from the waiting room. As folks are joining us, just a couple quick reminders. This session is being recorded and will be posted tomorrow on our YouTube channel and our parent.ucse.edu website. Also, at any point throughout tonight's session, please feel free to utilize the question and answer feature located at the bottom of your screen. We remind you to please not share any personal information. You may also submit questions anonymously if you choose, and we will address as many questions as we can, not only during our live Q&A with our presenter towards the end of today's session, but also with staff helping answer questions off air. All right. Again, thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your day, evening, or morning in supporting your student by attending our Trying Family web series. Today's session is all about writing. And before I introduce our presenter and get started with the presentation, I just want to introduce myself, today's host. My name is Dan Perez. I am the Assistant Director for the Office of Parent and Family Programs. And I have the pleasure of working with all of our colleagues across campus to help coordinate and put together the Trying Family web series, which started back in 2020 and has continued all the way now until 2024. It's been a long 4 years, but we've been able to put together some great sessions like this one, all in the name of supporting families and supporting their students. And today's session will focus on academics, specifically academic writing, and how the Writing Hub can connect your student to not just tools and resources for being a successful writer, but being a successful student overall. And with that said, I would like to introduce today's presenter, Dr. Christine Sharp, the director of the Writing Hub from the Teaching and Learning Commons.
Thank you for that intro. Hello, folks. Good evening here from La Jolla, from UCSD's campus. I am really glad that I get to spend some of my evening with you all. I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and to fielding some of those questions and addressing them as we move forward. I want to start by introducing myself and also acknowledging the amazing work of my colleagues in the Writing Hub. And then I'd like to tell you a little bit about the vision that we use to ground ourselves in our work in the Writing Hub. So I am somebody for whom writing has been an extremely significant part of my life. I was the first in my family to attend and graduate college, and writing was actually something that felt a little mysterious and even a little bit scary for me, at least in the college setting. And I know that perhaps I share that in common with some of our current students too. For my story, I found that it was very difficult. I found it very challenging to seek out resources such as our Writing Center. And in hindsight, I realized how much I needed that extra lift. I could have used that extra lift and that support from a writing community in the college setting. So I'm glad that I get a chance to speak with you about how a writing community, specifically one that is grounded in best practices in the field of writing studies, one in which our work is always at the forefront of leading edge research and writing studies, how it is, in other words, that this space can benefit your students and what you can do in your particular places in their lives to assist them in getting to these resources. I wanted to share that in our hub, we believe that we are all writers, and I suppose that includes you, whether you think of it or not. You too are a writer. And we also take seriously the idea that we write best at optimal levels when we work together and write together in community. It is why for our students here, we find that working with their peers to look at their writing, to revise their writing, to brainstorm and work on the entire writing process, this is the best strategy to ensure success. We also approach our work, as I said, grounded in the particular field of writing studies, which reminds us, among other things, that writing is an iterative process. It takes place over time. The process might look a little different from one writer to another. Writing involves challenge, ongoing growth and development, and emergence as writers that are works in progress. And that's true for our students as well. And it's also about helping and understanding the pathways through which writers understand how to communicate with different audiences. And so our peer writing tutors are trained to guide students through all of that, their entire writing journeys as they set out here at UCSD, as they identify, set, and then achieve their goals as writers. And as I said, you can see on the screen here my amazing staff who join me in that endeavor. This is our professional staff. They are, however, joined by 20 undergraduate consultants. We also provide services for graduate students as well as for faculty, but I'm really focused on the undergraduate experience for tonight. All of our efforts across our Writing Hub align to uplift the learning and aspirations of our entire community with this emphasis on writing and communication. I wanted to just run through what you can expect your students to experience when they come here to the Writing Hub. We provide opportunities to meet with trained peer writing consultants. They represent a variety of backgrounds and majors. That includes international and multilingual students who we hire and who work here. They offer these one-on-one sessions that are 45 minutes in length for our undergraduate students. And they work on all kinds of things, writing assignments for their college writing programs, writing assignments in what I would call the disciplines, so in the majors, where your students are taking both lower and then upper division courses, writing projects from capstones or other classes. And actually, our consultants can also work with your students on writing for non-class projects. So if they're producing graduate school applications, cover letters, Fulbright or other scholarship applications, these are all items and ideas that your students can bring to the Writing Hub. And they have an opportunity to meet face-to-face. We're located currently in Geisel Library on the first floor. I also wanted to just pause and tell you a little bit about why it is that we believe that peer education, so peer-to-peer tutoring, matters so much. It's something that we know is associated with higher academic achievement. So studies have demonstrated that peer-led academic support can lead to improved academic performance. It's a type of high-impact practice for learning. Also, it's a means by which students can be introduced to and become comfortable with diverse perspectives. Peer educators come from diverse backgrounds, and they equip the folks that they work with diverse perspectives to more holistically support student learning. Also, peers can provide a supportive learning environment that is a little lower stakes than, say, meeting with a scary faculty member or even with a TA. So in the supportive learning environment, peer educators are deeply invested in student learning and success. You know, they too are part of this landscape, and they too have benefited from tutoring. So they are here to help our students learn and meet their academic goals, not just to get the right answers necessarily, but to really dig into the process of learning. And also, peers are a great site for empathy. So by employing current UC San Diego students, they actually are able to leverage their own sensibilities and their own experiences to help uplift the students that they work with. So please know that that's part of what your students experience when they come in. I mentioned that students can meet with our consultants in person, but we also offer online appointments. This is something that we started integrating into our services, of course, during the pandemic. And we have found that it is worthwhile to retain different pathways for students to access our services that are both in person as well as online or synchronous. In any of these sessions, online or in person, our consultants are trained to assist writers in committing to making incremental progress on their writing and in a supportive community setting. And so students can expect when they visit to engage in a conversation about their work. with a curious reader, someone who wants them to succeed and who is familiar with writing and communication expectations here on this campus. Students can also expect to discover how an informed reader, in this case, their consultant, reacts to their writing in real time, and thereby strengthen the impact of what they're writing or communicating by considering those questions, these questions that can reveal the way in which maybe an external audience or a general audience would be responding to what they write or what they're communicating. When they visit with our consultants, students are also motivated. They're prompted to delve deeper into writing as a process, so to better understand how they navigate the writing process themselves, in what order they need to produce the writing, what's most helpful for them in that process. And they come to us and they're developing writing and revision strategies that can be applied not just to that assignment in question, but transfers into future assignments and projects. And we hope, and our aspirations are, that it will translate into life outside of the academy as well. Ultimately, too, when we work with students, we aspire for them to get a sense of and an understanding of language as a tool for empowerment, that their language and the writing that they engage with is really a way in which they can put their voices out there and demonstrate what it is that they've learned and how it is that they're contributing to broader discourse networks. I put this chart here just in case you're curious about what it looks like or whether or not there are differences between an in-person or an online or synchronous session. And there's really not much different, certainly in terms of what our tutors do to approach these sessions. They have conversations the same way if they're in person or online. I think the biggest difference simply is that online access enables students who need remote accessibility to have that option available to them. And so it really expands opportunities. It makes it easier for students to access resources such as our own. Online sessions too have an option to share the e-text of whatever the student might be working on. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a polished paper. It could even be just sharing notes on this screen, but that screen, the sort of document develops in real time as the consultant and the writer, the student writer, talk with one another via video chat. So it's sort of like what you're looking at here, except you and I would be exchanging thoughts on this document in front of us. I'd say that in either case, all of our goals are the same as I've described so far. I also thought that maybe you're curious about what it is that we do to train our writing consultants. I would say that in particular, if you think of your student and you imagine that perhaps they would want to work someplace like this, or they might benefit from being a writing consultant, it's worth paying attention to some of this. It's also, I think, just really important for us to be grounded in established best practices for training our consultants, and that's precisely what we do. So in all of our training, we ensure that our consultants are able to facilitate student-centered peer-to-peer discussion about writing and using the lens of inquiry or asking questions, revealing things about what the writer is seeking to accomplish, that this is part of the technique we train our consultants to pursue. We also train our consultants to foster transferable writing skills. So that means that consultants will point out when some aspect of the writing that's being worked on could be applicable maybe in another discipline or in another setting. This helps reinforce all of the ways in which at all times our students are learning here on campus and then taking that learning even outside of the academy. Our consultants are also trained to encourage student writers to reflect upon their writing and to revise even beyond the sessions. So that is to say that the work doesn't just end here at the table, but it continues when your student goes back to their room or goes back home. That at least is part of what we encourage our consultants to accomplish with our student writers. Our writing consultants are themselves very committed to guiding students to develop strategies that align with their communication choices. So you might hear from your student if they meet with our consultants, you might hear like, oh yeah, they asked me a lot of questions about what I was trying to accomplish in this paper, or what my purpose was, or what my professor asked of me, or any notes that I got from my professor. So this is all intentional. It's part of setting the stage, so to speak, so that the writers that we're working with are thinking broadly in terms of how they want to accomplish the ends of this particular assignment that they're working on. Writing consultants are going to focus on reader understanding, and they're going to prioritize clarity. And what this means is part of the transferable skills we're hoping that your students gain is understanding how they have the tools necessary to really write to or speak with any audience whatsoever, not just their faculty members, not just their peers, but anybody beyond the academy in the job setting, professional settings. They will be able to remind themselves like, oh, hey, I worked on this with my consultant. I can handle this. I can translate these skills. Our consultants will ask lots of questions, as I said, and consultants will remind the student to use the prompt if there is one, or directions from the faculty member. They go back to those prompts to ensure that our student writers are really orienting their responses to the particular either genre specific or context specific expectations for the assignment they're working on. The consultants themselves are writers. As I said, we're all writers. They are really focused on developing writers, and our assumption, really our shared vision, is that we're all developing as writers. And I think that I've said a lot already about how they engage in conversations that are really meant to help students understand how they can approach their writing and understand areas for improvement and ongoing growth. Our consultants also have to demonstrate that they have a strong academic background, so that, among other things, they can handle working a job while maintaining good academic standing. And we are searching for folks that have advanced skills in critical thinking and writing, analytical writing, and rhetorical conventions. That does help when it comes to making sure that our staff are equipped to meet the needs of a very diverse student body here. I've talked a lot about what we do here at the Writing Hub, but I also wanted to spend some time thinking through with you how it is that really we work together in our different spaces. And I do intentionally include you in this, but we work together to set our students up for success. So this is in part things that I've noticed as somebody who has taught writing for 20 years, who's run a writing center for over a decade. It's what I've learned works for our students and what I've learned from our consultants that assist their students in being successful in their visits. So one thing that we can do to help set our students up for success is to assist them in understanding their writing process, what works or doesn't work, how can they manage their time in an effective way, knowing how it is that they tend to produce ideas around the topics that they're supposed to be writing about. We also know that students who book appointments that match their writing process tend to do better. Students who book their appointments to get feedback on their writing or to brainstorm with our consultants, if they do that early and often, they tend to find success, and they move quickly through their development as writers. It's also helpful for students to imagine ahead of time what can be accomplished in 45 minutes. So we really only have 45 minutes at a time to get the most out of our consulting sessions. And it's amazing how much you can accomplish, especially if our students think ahead of time about what they want to zoom in on. By the end of their session, our consultants are also trained to tell our students that this is what they've accomplished and maybe to consider some homework to do when they go home. I wanted to add here too that sometimes students follow up and they meet with our consultants regularly. Sometimes one 45-minute session is sufficient. Either way, another aspect of success is related to offering student writers some time to process feedback. This is why, for instance, we encourage writers not to just set appointments back to back to back, but instead to work for a little bit, reflect on their writing, revise it, and then maybe make an appointment a little bit later to continue work on that piece. If possible, if students think ahead of time, more specifically about what questions and concerns could be best addressed by their writing consultants, their professors, their TAs, if they already have that at the back of their mind, they're going to find that they have a more meaningful exchange with our consultants. And also, if they come ready to discuss their work with our student consultants, and imagining that these are folks who have general expertise in the disciplines, right? They might not be specialists in, say, literature, but they're interested in writing generally. They're interested in the way in which we craft arguments and we craft our perspectives in writing. It also can really, really help if student writers come to us with reflection questions ahead of time, maybe something that they really wanted to focus on with our consultants. That makes a huge difference when they come into the Writing Hub. I've said a lot about the Writing Hub, but it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention the other hubs that are here, the other types of services that your students can take advantage of at the Teaching and Learning Commons. Here at the Teaching and Learning Commons, the vision that really drives this space is that those of us who are orienting our efforts towards lifting our student population can do so more effectively if we are addressing the different areas and ways in which our students are growing as learners. That means that I am here in the Writing Hub, but I'm also accompanied by my colleagues in academic achievement services, in experiential learning. We also have colleagues that are focused on faculty development because we can't ensure student success without enabling our faculty to be successful instructors too. We also even have a unit that's devoted to assessment. Ideally, we're going to set our students up for success and we can be responsible to them and meet them where they are if we have the data that we need to understand their experiences and where it is that we're making our impact. I wanted to tell you about two specific hubs that I think would be most relevant to your student experiences. And then I will be really, really happy to field any of your questions that you might have or just have a conversation about writing in the college setting. But academic achievement services, I wanted to let you know that this is a space where your students can get support for content-based learning, essentially, with a specific emphasis upon STEM fields and more qualitative fields. The support for students takes form in two ways. Firstly, through supplemental instruction or SI. These are sessions that reinforce the material that has been learned in lecture through a weekly regular group study session. Students are expected to attend these sessions, and they're run by student peer tutors that have actually taken that class and are in close communication with the faculty member running that class. So you can imagine how effective that can be for uplifting our student success. This is also the space where students can take advantage of content tutoring. So that's more general tutoring that's offered regularly for STEM courses, where students can develop problem-solving skills to better comprehend source material, also run by peers. My colleagues in experiential learning services also are the home for what's called the co-curricular record. This is where students can track everything that they're doing outside of the classroom. So if they're taking an internship, if they're involved in research, if they're working with a professor, if they work at a place like the Writing Hub or the Teaching and Learning Commons, they can actually track and demonstrate to future employers how it is that these experiences are responsive to the development of competencies and skills that matter in the workplace. It's a really, really valuable tool for our students. The Real Portal is a way in which students can find out more about internship opportunities. This is also the home for what's called the Academic Internship Program. This allows students to study in Washington, D.C. or in Sacramento to have internships and also take classes there while they're studying there. Like I said, there's a lot that we're doing at the Teaching and Learning Commons. I spent most of my time talking about writing, and that's the focus of our conversation today. And I want to hear how it is that I can better understand your students, your what you're curious about, any questions that you might have for the rest of our time today.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Yes, please do utilize the question and answer feature that is located at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions, as we'll head into our portion of question and answer. Um, so one question I see already, which was also included in our pre-registration group of questions, is related to STEM students. So this attendee is asking, with the focus on analytical writing, is it that the Writing Hub consultants are mainly from STEM fields?
You know, they're not. They represent all the disciplines. And I think it's also important for so many reasons that we do have consultants that are from STEM backgrounds. In my experience, when I talk about being the director of a writing center, most folks think, oh, well, that's, for literature or for history, right? For humanistic study. But in fact, many of us know that there's quite a bit of writing that is relevant in STEM fields. So we have consultants that represent and come from all the disciplines here. I noticed too that there's kind of a related question about tutoring for non-STEM classes. And I'm wondering if that question has to do with what my colleagues do. And if so, their websites are probably more helpful. But for the Writing Hub, the tutoring that our writing consultants provide is responsive to all disciplines. And that absolutely includes non-STEM classes. Some of our most common visits are coming from the first year writing programs or transfer writing programs, so in the colleges. And then beyond that, we see a lot of folks from psychology, from history, philosophy. So you name it, you can think of any discipline, and we're seeing writers from those disciplines here. These are great questions.
There's also a related question we had from the registration,
Yeah.
which wanted to address academic writing for STEM students, particularly of how much writing is integrated into the STEM coursework.
Oh, that's such a good question. And I actually really love talking to my colleagues, the faculty members who teach STEM courses. Um, my answer is it depends. And it depends on the faculty member. It also, I think, depends upon the kind of arc of the STEM student experience. And based on my understanding, you're probably going to see students engaged in some writing in the sort of lower division courses in STEM. These tend to be those bigger courses. And so you can imagine that not only is it important for the content to be front and center, but that also, quite frankly, for faculty who are teaching these big courses, they're not going to be able to grade loads and loads of paper, right? I would say that the writing itself then becomes more significant as your student progresses through STEM courses. And it does really depend upon the particular area of STEM that they're focused on. But writing does matter in STEM.
Does and it's different.
It's different. Yes. Yeah.
Speaking of different writing, a question we have from a parent as well is asking if there is writing consultation for languages other than just English.
Great question. Not through the Writing Hub. However, I will say that our consultants do speak multiple languages. And so, not all of them, but many of them do. And so what that means is that if your student is a multilingual student, they can feel confident that they're going to be working with consultants that know what it's like to navigate across and between languaging practices. I think if you're asking specifically about tutoring that is related to a particular language, I am guessing that the departments themselves might have something like that embedded in the department. So it might be a question that should be directed to those departments.
Another question here is about appointments.
Yeah.
Typically, can a student set up regular appointments? Is the first part of the question. Can the student see the same writing consultant in
Mhm.
each appointment? And is there a limit to how many appointments a student can sign up for?
Okay. Yes, yes, sort of. So, uh, now I'm trying to remember the actual questions. I
So
was busy remembering the
I
answer.
got you. So can a student set regular
They
appointments?
absolutely can set regular appointments. And you can probably find our website somewhere in the chat at some point soon. Students can just visit our website and they can sign up online for an appointment via a scheduling platform called WC Online. I encourage them actually to look at their syllabi, look at the class schedules, especially for writing intensive courses, and to think carefully about their writing process and to think strategically about when they can make those appointments, hopefully ahead of time. I find that for the writers that I would teach in my writing courses, when they did that, it helped them stay committed to regular progress on these writing assignments. I often tailored my class so that essentially they kind of had to go get feedback on their work. But if your student can do something like that, it would be very wise of them to do that. The second one was, can they meet with the same consultant? They can actually, if they wanted to, they would be able to see that on the schedule. And that sometimes happens. Sometimes you just click, with another person. One thing I really love about that is that it mimics the way in which I think more developed writers like ourselves, how we function in the world. We need to find our writing communities so that they will help motivate us and kind of keep us on track. And your students can do the same thing, especially if they find a consultant that they kind of really connect with. There are some limitations to the number of visits only when it comes to the number of visits per week. So I believe that our maximum is 3 visits per week. And this is simply to make sure that we have enough room and we have enough scale to meet the demands of our entire student body. But there is no sort of larger limit, right? Your student can really come in as often as they would like. And in fact, if you find that your student is coming to you and saying, gosh, I really need to meet with writing consultants more often, I could really use it, have them just email us and we will work with them on a strategy to help them be successful. I think I got to all 3 questions, right?
You did, and now I have a follow-up.
Okay.
That's just come through. So in this, about selecting regular appointments or meeting with the same writing consultant,
Mhm.
can students select an appointment with a consultant who may have the same major or may have a background in an area in which a student has a writing assignment for or a class in?
They can do that. On our website, they can find out more about our student staff members. There's a site there where there are short biographies of each of our students. They wrote them themselves. And they often will refer to their anticipated majors. And I think to this, I might add, though you didn't ask, I might add a little bit from my own experience as a writer. My roommate was a pre-med major and I was a literature history major. So you can imagine that you'd think that there'd be no overlap in terms of what it is that we had to produce as writers. She didn't really understand what I was doing for my classes. I didn't really understand her classes. However, she was one of the best folks that I could go to because she was more of a STEM major and not a lit person. She approached my papers from a more generalist perspective and was able to find things that my literature colleagues would just miss. So yes, your student can meet with folks from a similar major and also maybe encourage them to try folks outside of their major too. It might reveal to them areas for additional growth and for strengthening of their papers.
No, that's a great way to look at that. So this is a topic that I figured we would get a couple questions about, but thankfully I guess only one. But an attendee is asking particularly a question surrounding ChatGPT
Oh,
and AI paper writing.
mhm.
Um, are the writing consultants familiar with how to look for AI generated writing? And then are they equipped to advise students against using such tools for their coursework?
Yes and yes. And of course, I'm going to follow up with a little bit more information. I have to send a shout out to our wonderful colleagues in the Academic Integrity Office. This is a whole office that is committed to essentially assisting our students in learning about the types of qualities that will make them more integrous members of our society. And so I really have to hand it to them that just broadly on our campus, they're assisting our students in making good decisions about, among other things, whether or not it's appropriate to use ChatGPT or other Gen AI tools. It's also worth my noting that there are some faculty who are asking students to use such tools intentionally as a way of assisting with cognitive load when they're producing ideas, as a means of demonstrating, sometimes our brains just work better in communicating. So I did want you to know that as well. Our consultants, even before ChatGPT, had been trained to assist writers in the use of or the effective use of sources so that it was clear to readers and to highlight places where it felt like maybe the voice that was coming across in the writing didn't quite sound like the writer they were working with. And so, yes, our consultants are experienced in just asking questions around any sections that might feel off a little bit, right? Um, the follow-up to that was, whether or not they're trained to then direct writers thereafter. And they are, right? That they will just let these writers know, hey, if you're using ChatGPT, you need to check in with your faculty member. You need to make sure that it is okay for you to use this. If it's not, you need to reconsider this whole area. We've also trained them to then escalate to us if they're worried about that student. That gives us an extra opportunity to reach out and to assist those students in making decisions that are in better alignment with the course outcomes for their class.
Yeah, I would say I feel like since the internet has been so easily accessible to everyone, there's always been a new I guess, hurdle when it comes to avoiding plagiarism and ensuring you're citing your work, because as the resources increase online, be
Yeah.
it from being able to purchase papers
Mhm.
to Wikipedia with unsourced resources and falling into that trap to now with ChatGPT just changes the landscape a little bit.
It has, and a lot of our practices are still grounded in what we had always done with those other technologies. Yeah.
Uh, Thank you for that answer on artificial intelligence. Another great question is, how do you encourage students to take advantage of the great services from the Writing Hub and in the Teaching and Learning Commons altogether?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. It's a work in progress. We have an Instagram account. Again, I think you can find that by sort of following the thread through our website to the Teaching and Learning Commons site. So we try to get to students through social media. And then I'll be honest with you, we're trying to figure out that strange alchemy that somehow we have to unlock to communicate with and connect with our students. A lot of that involves reaching out to faculty and having faculty advocate for our students to use the resources that are at their disposal here at the Teaching and Learning Commons and elsewhere, of course. That, in other words, that's part of the practice and habits that make us successful learners wherever we might be. We also visit at events such as these that are student facing. There's lots of ways in which we try to interface with our students, but we're always looking for new and innovative ways to connect. So if you have a secret to communicating with this generation, I am all ears.
I know it's ever changing too. We talk about ever
Right,
changing landscapes of keeping up with communication.
right.
And I would also say from the family perspective, it's one, by being here, you're already learning about the resources and getting the education on what UC San Diego offers students so you can better have that conversation. And when your student may say they're struggling with a paper or they need to get help with writing or they're struggling with being able to keep it up consistently or come up with ideas depending on what they're studying, so you know where to send them, you know who to look out for, how to find the specific resources and where to look. And if you don't know where to look and your students asking, you can always reach out to my office and we'll be more than happy to connect you, not just with Dr. Sharp's team, but the whole Teaching and Learning Commons or any office across the campus. But the main thing is, by you being here during this Trying Family web series, you're getting the information to help support your students. So that's the first step in helping encourage your student in seeking out these resources. So again, great question. Um, we have time for a couple more. So a quick question for the writing consulting, can a student use the writing assignment from the class for a consulting topic?
For a consulting topic, I think I'm
So I think this is more, can a student bring an actual assignment for consultation from a class? Is
as in like to help understand the assignment itself.
I believe that's where we're into.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. And in fact, I mean, I would even extend that to other forms of writing, right? So, as an example, if the question pertains to, like, say I gave my students a writing assignment and my students were just wanting some support in understanding exactly what I wanted, they could just bring that in. They don't have to have a paper or even their notes prepared when they meet with our consultants. They could bring in the prompt and just say, can you help me make sense of this and maybe assist me in generating an idea that will help me respond to this? So yes, absolutely, our consultants can help with that. That's true too for job applications, fellowship applications. I don't know if you've seen some of those prompts, but they can be kind of lengthy, and it just can help to have somebody who is practiced in understanding what to look for in these kinds of assignments or prompts. So yes, that is definitely something that our consultants can assist with.
And on the flip side, can a student seek a consultation if they don't even have an assignment, they just need general help in improving their writing skills?
Yeah, and I would say that, the slides where I shared with you what our students can do to better prepare themselves, if they can come to their session with particular aspects that they want to work on. So for instance, maybe they come to the session and they just say, I just wanted to talk through how it is that I can better strategize to organize my ideas. Can we just talk about that a little bit? They can have a conversation with our consultants about that or any aspect related to writing.
And I think before we close here, we did have one question that I would love to ask of your expertise from the registration, which was, Dr. Sharp, why are cliches bad in writing?
Oh, Well, the assumption there, of course, is that they are bad, or anything, any tool that we use in writing is bad. Um, I am Cuban. I was born here in the States, but my family is Cuban, and this will all make sense in a minute. I think of any of the tools we use in communication as spices. So in Cuban cooking, our food isn't spicy, but it is flavorful. Lots of garlic, lots of onions, lots of peppers, not spicy peppers. And so I know as a cook for Cuban food that there is a correct balance to strike when it comes to those spices. And not everyone is going to like all of the garlic that I might throw into this particular dish, but I know that's the way to do it. And that's the way that's true to my heart, right? I think that cliches, like any other piece of writing, using the personal I, pausing or saying when you're talking, these are all parts of the flavors that we incorporate into our writing. So I guess what I would say is that they're not inherently bad. You just have to season very mindfully.
Also, I think it depends on your audience as well.
Always your audience and what you think they need or want from you. Yes.
Well, thank you all for those great questions. And thank you for your fantastic answers, Dr. Sharp. I know we have just a couple more slides before we wrap up this session.
This tells you a little bit more about where to find information about us, when we're open. So this is useful for your students, of course, to know, but they can find all this on our website.
Yes, and thank you so much for spending your time with us today, Dr. Sharp. We really appreciate it. And for our participants, please know that we will be sending out not just the recording of today's session, but a copy of these slides as well. So if you've registered for the session, you'll get these, so you can get the exact times, the links, and all of the details that Dr. Sharp has covered today. And as we move forward, we are not stopping with our Trine Family Web series for 2024. Our next session will be in a few weeks on Tuesday, February 13th at 4 p.m. We're talking about housing. So we will be discussing everything that families and students need to know if they plan to return to live on campus for next year for 2024-2025. If students are moving off campus for the first time, we'll have experts here to talk not just about how to navigate signing leases, co-signing, searching for off-campus housing, the resources UC San Diego provides as well. So any important housing deadline, application, and or strategy for searching for off-campus housing will be available in this session. It's one that we do annually because it is one of our most attended sessions, with nearly about 1,000 people attending every time we do it, because we know housing is essential to students being successful here at UC San Diego. So again, registration for that will open this weekend. There will be a link in the follow-up email that includes the slides and recording for this session for registration for this session as well. So please make sure to bookmark this and save the date. If you would like to share this session with someone who may need language translation, once it's posted on our YouTube, all of our recordings may have translated captions, so you can do that automatically through YouTube's subtitle generation tool, and then you can select auto translate to select the language so that they may be able to view this in their preferred language. And that's available for all of our recordings up on our YouTube channel. And lastly, thank you again to our presenter, Dr. Sharp. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for taking time out of your day and supporting your student success here at UC San Diego. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach us at parents@ucsd.edu. If it's about Trine Family Web Series, or if you have more questions about the Writing Hub, we'll make sure to answer those as well if we didn't get to your question today. And please stay connected with us on social media at the links posted below. And as I mentioned, that YouTube channel, which is /UCSD Families, is going to be where the recording of this session and all of our virtual sessions will be posted. So again, until next time, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.